Well, hello and welcome to this revision exercise on function, inverse function, domain and range. It is based on an iGCSE question. Okay, here we go. Now for section 1, it says that a function g is such that g of x equal to 1 over 2x minus 1, and we're given the domain of 1 and 3. Okay, and then it says, for the first section, it says, find the range of g. Okay, and the second section says find the inverse of g, and then the third section says write down the domain of the inverse of g. And for the fourth section, it says solve the equation g 2x equal to what, or g squared x equal to 3, sorry, equal to 3. Now I tend to say this as g of gx is equal to 3. That's my preferred method, I think. Anyway, here we go. And it says, for the first one, find the range of g. Now, we know the domain, which is from 1 to 3. So to find the range, we have to replace this x in here by 1 and again by 3. So, if x is 3, g of 3 then becomes 1 over 2 times 3 minus 1. Now, 2 times 3 is 6, 6 minus 1 is 5. So, 1 over 5 will give the same as 0.2. Similarly, if x is equal to 1, g of 1 is equal to 1 over 2 times 1 minus 1. And 2 times 1 is 2, 2 minus 1 is 1. That becomes, so g of 1 is now the same as 1 there. So the range of g then becomes y is greater than or equal to 2, but less than or equal to 1. Okay. Now for the second section, it says find the inverse of g. In other words, we want to find g of y. Okay, so now we say that x is equal to, well, so hang on, we replace the x there by y. Okay, so now we have that x is equal to 1 over 2y minus 1, because we now replace our x by y there. If we then cross multiply, we end up with x into 2y minus 1 is equal to 1. Okay, and if we then open up the bracket, we end up with 2xy minus x is equal to 1. If we then add x to both sides, we end up with 2xy is equal to 1 plus x. If we then divide both sides by 2x, we have that y is equal to 1 plus x divided by 2x. So that's the inverse of g. Right. Now, for section 3, it says write down the domain of g, write down the domain of the inverse of g. Now, I know it says write down, but I should try and explain how I got my answers. Right. Now, the ordered pair for the original function will be, if you think, 1, 1, and 3, 0.2. When x is 1, y is 1. When x is 3, y is 0.2. Now, for the inverse function, the range now becomes the domain, and the domain of the original function becomes the range, such as this one here. Now, what's happened is that this one here has switched to that one there. And this one here has switched to this one here. So, to make it a bit more clear, that's what's happened here. That one is switched over there, and that's switched over to that one there. So the range of the original function now becomes the domain of the inverse function, and the domain of the original function then becomes the range of the inverse function. Okay, so what we've now got, the domain is now 0.2 and 1. Okay, so that's what we got there. So x is greater than or equal to 0.2, which comes from this one here, and x is less than or equal to 1, which comes from this one here. So this is now our domain. Okay, for section 4, it says solve g of gx is equal to 3. Now, what I'm going to do is to rewrite this as g of gx equal to 3. Now, this is g of x in there. So I want to put the value of g of x, which is this one here. Okay, so I'm going to move this from there to there. So we now have g of 1 over 2x minus 1 is equal to 3. Now I'm going to replace this x value there by this here, this expression here. So now we end up with 1 divided by 2. Okay, now this 2 is this 2 there. And the x there is 1 here. And our minus 1 here is this minus 1 there. Okay, so now we got, if we now cross multiply, we end up with 1 is equal to 3 multiplied by 2 into 1 minus 2x minus 1, because this is the denominator from the last line, or this denominator there. Right, if we then open up the bracket, we end up 1 is equal to 6 over 2x minus 1 minus 3. If we then add 3 to both sides, we end up with 4 is equal to 6 divided by 2x minus 1. If we then multiply both sides by 2x minus 1, we end up with 4 into 2x minus 1, which is equal to 6. We expand the bracket, we end up with 8x minus 4 is equal to 6. Add 4 to both sides, we have 8x equal to 10. Divide both sides by 8, we have x is equal to 10 over 8, and which then reduces to 5 over 4. So the value of x is 1.25. I hope all that made some sense, and please subscribe. Thank you for watching. Bye bye now.